Hi fellow bombers, I am Brian from Atomic-Moto and I'm here to do a review of the Forma Adventure HDry boots. The Adventure HDrys are a variation of Forma's Adventure model, which is their most popular model and perhaps the most popular boot sold in the adventure touring category. The HDry has some upgrades from the regular Adventure. We're going to tell you all about them and give you our opinions on them, our no BS take on it. So let's get started. Little history on the Forma Adventure HDry. Now the Adventure, which this model is based on, has been around since 2011. We started selling it very, very early on. A lot of customers, we delivered those boots to a lot of customers. They all really like them. But the Adventure HDry, which has some upgrades, came out in 2019. And it has a lot of material upgrades, which we'll get into in a minute. But first, let me start with the basics of the Adventure HDry. Now this boot comes in sizes 5 US or a European 38, all the way up to a 14 US or a 49 EU. It retails for $339 as of the filming of this video. It weighs 2.84 pounds for this size 46. Normally we weigh a size 45. Figure that's probably about 2.76 to 2.80, not much of a difference, but 2.84 pounds for this size 46. The reason that we weigh these is because I pulled them off the shelf and this is going to be my personal pair. And it's about 14 inches tall, which is a little bit taller than many other boots in the ADV category. And then last but not least, the Forma Adventure HDry is made in Forma's production facility in Romania. As I dive into the construction, I'll talk about the upgrades that the HDry has compared to the regular Adventure, then I'll talk about the features that both of them have. Now, first of all, the HDry has a different way, a different method, a different type of inner waterproof liner. Normally the inner waterproof liner on an adventure touring boot like this, any motorcycle boot, is like a large sort of slipper. And it is bonded inside the boot. It comes as one unit and it's bonded inside the boot. They glue it in place and put it in there. The Adventure HDry, the waterproof membrane is actually bonded to the outer shell of the boot, much in the way that Klein's Gore-Tex gear is made with 2 or 3 layer laminates. And this is a little bit more durable method of construction, gives a little bit more breathability, slightly different production techniques, more expensive to manufacture, we understand, but it is a better, higher quality, more reliable way of constructing a waterproof boot. And Forma tells us that this boot is going to be quite a bit more reliable than their regular Forma Adventure. Other upgrades from the standard Adventure, the leather on this is much nicer. It is oil tanned. It's not like the Guernet Balance oil tanned leather, but it is a really nice feel. It's a good suede. It's got a great color to it. Styling on it is excellent. The buckles are also a minor upgrade from the standard Adventures, and those are quite easy to operate. It's aluminum buckle. They're super easy to replace, inexpensive to do so. I doubt you would ever have to because they're quite durable, and then the straps are also replaceable. There are 3 buckles, and that's nice too. They're not skimping on it. It's a little bit more secure method of closure. You don't get quite as much adjustment on the upper part of the boot using a buckle, but it's a better, more expensive, more secure way of clamping the upper part of the boot down. The boot has a decent amount of protective reinforcements in it. You can't see them, but it has disc-shaped cups on the outer and the inner malleolus, and that means ankle, and that helps give a little bit of support to the ankle area, to the shaft. It has a hard insert underneath the toe and a hard insert underneath the heel. It has a plastic shin plate here on the front. It's got a little padding on the rear in the calf area, but doesn't have a hard insert in that area. The sole is one of the nicest things about this particular boot. It's got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. First of all, there is a steel shank in the middle of the sole to make the boot a little bit more firm, a little bit more stiff for standing on the pegs. However, the boot has quite a bit of flex in the forefoot, and I'll show you that. This is one of the easier boots to flex, and that gives it a little bit more of a sensation like a hiking boot. It's a bonded sole, not a welt sole. It's a bonded sole glued on. And The other thing I want to show you that's really cool about it is the sole pattern on this. It is nice and soft and grippy, has a lot of detail, a lot of relief to it, lots of edges to grab to give you more grip when you're hiking around off the bike. And it looks and feels very much like a hiking boot. The softness of this, the compound of it, is most beneficial, for example, if you're walking on wet rocks. There's just quite a bit more grip than you'd get off of this compared to like a motocross boot where you'd be on your ass. And then last but not least, there's a good amount of padding on the inside of the ankle area. The ankle on this boot is quite comfortable. The padding is not super thick, it's not super firm, but it's not super thin and super soft either. It's kind of like a Goldilocks foam on the inner ankle, on the inside of the ankle, so it gives you a good amount of support there in that area. Describing the fit of this boot, I'll split it into a couple of things. First of all, the market feedback on this particular boot, they love the fit. This is one of the most popular boots that we sell for its fit. There's a couple of reasons why. One of them is that the boot has quite a bit of flex. It's a little bit on the soft side, and it has a bit of a hiking boot-esque feel to it. But the other thing is that the shape of this product, again, that's not a two-dimensional thing, bigger, smaller, narrower, wider. The shape, which is a more nuanced, more subtle, harder to quantify factor on this boot, is really good. The forefoot of it is pretty darn wide, and it also has a good amount of vertical height. And that combination means it fits all sorts of feet. There's a fair bit of vertical height in it. And I do think that if you put a better quality footbed in this boot, or really any boot at all, it makes them feel quite a bit better. But it's not really necessary. You can do it in this, but it's not really necessary like some other models. The ankle area is pretty good and supportive, and the heel is actually fairly narrow. I wouldn't describe this as like a months and last kind of boot, but it does have a sort of similar effect to that. Speaking about the protection of the Forma Adventure HDry, and that's a little bit light on protection. The boot's pretty tall, that's good. The shaft clamps nice and firmly around the leg, that's good also, helps give a little bit of support for twisting. It has these disc-shaped supports in the ankle area, and also has protection in the heel area and the toe area, has some support underneath the arch for foot pegs, and then a plastic shin plate. But the boot is fairly soft torsionally for flex, and also is pretty soft here in the midsole. So the protection of this boot is not something that that I would compare with other high-end or more serious adventure touring boots. But again, Forma has another model, the Terra Evo X, that you're going to look at if that is what you're doing on the bike. But the protection of this boot is really more balanced, at more striking a balance, striking a balance, aimed at striking a balance between comfort off the bike and then some protection on the bike. Time for our comments on the Forma Adventure HDry. Now, this is the best example that we know of giving the people what they want. And what the people want is an adventure touring boot that feels like a hiking boot. You could not make a better description about this boot than that. This is the adventure touring boot that feels like a hiking boot. It has a very natural walking motion. The sole compound, the sole shape, the relief in the sole, all feels quite a bit like a hiking boot. There's a decent amount of flex in the forefoot, so you're not rolling up onto your toes like some off-road boots. This boot really feels like a hiking boot. It has great feedback for the controls, you know, that little bit of flex there when you're pressing down on the brake pedal and this is bending, or you're lifting up on the shift pedal and this is flexing downward. That's great for getting feedback from the motorcycle's controls. The walkability of this boot, again, is very easy. It has a nice natural walking motion, and then the weight of it is quite light. I have hiking boots that are like 2.2 pounds, 2.3 pounds, so the weight of this, even though it's tall, is not that different than most hiking boots. While I'm talking about that, I want to single out again, I want to emphasize again the execution of this boot, which is kind of like a secret sauce. Forma's really worked very hard on this boot, doing lots of little iterations over time to give it a particular feel, and that feel really aligns very much with what the market is asking for. And then again, I want to shine a flashlight on the kind of sum of its parts execution of this boot. It just has this really great, really kind of makes you happy feel both on and off the motorcycle. And that's because Forma spent a lot of time developing this boot. They made lots of little changes over time. Of course, not just the Adventure HDry, which is a newer model, but the regular Adventure. They spent a lot of time and a lot of effort making these little iterations to this boot to give it this particular feel. The sole design, once again, I'm going to hold these up. It just looks, feels, walks, grips like a hiking boot, and that's spectacular. And Forma is a great company. They stand behind their product very well. They are a smaller, more nimble, more product-focused manufacturer and distributor here in the U.S., and we really like them. So this is definitely our favorite variation of the Forma Adventure, and we dig it. We think you should check it out. You know, a lot of our competitors are much more volume oriented. Unfortunately, we're not smart enough to do that. We like good product, but a lot of our competitors are more volume oriented, so they just like to pump out the lower priced stuff. We're a little bit more dialed into the product and how it works for you, and also kind of the construction and materials of it. And so this is really our preferred variation of the Forma Adventure, and we think that you should check it out. And with that, this is time for me to wrap up this video by saying we are Atomic-Moto, www.atomic-moto.com, home of the bombers. We are mission focused on finding great stuff like this, understanding it, breaking it down, and explaining it to you in videos like this. We have a great YouTube channel. We would love it if you click like on this particular video, shared it with your friends, and then click subscribe. We want to drive that subscriber count up a little bit higher. We can get a little more traction. And I like to say at the end of every video, we hope to see you, not in the office, not behind the camera like I'm doing right now, but we hope to see you out on the saddle of your bike. Take care.